Today on Geeks on Trial, we're getting into the spooky season as we talk about our favorite Halloween attractions. Then our case takes us to Universal Studios, where we discuss the etiquette of moving ahead of others in line. Is it ever okay? We'll give you our verdicts. Stay tuned. What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers. There will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, End of the Line.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial for just a few bucks a month, and you'll gain early access to both our audio and video episodes before they are released to the general public. Boo! That's scary.
I was literally going to do the same exact thing.
Were you?
That's how stupid and hacky we are. We're both just going to boo each other, and you beat me to it.
Oh, I love booing you.
Yeah, but you did scare me. It was honestly terrifying.
Good.
Probably
Good.
a lot of
Perfect.
our listeners are in their cars and had heart attacks and swerved off the road.
They're dead now. But before you die, or if you have a will, just leave some of your money to us over at Patreon.
That's right. Now, we are in the prime time for the Halloween season, and Ivan, you wanted to discuss a little bit of the attractions that go up around this time of year.
Yes.
Specifically, like we're not talking about seeing your friend down the street who put up a big plastic ghost, or the hilarious
that's silly.
the witch that is crashed into a tree. I love that one.
Actually, I do
That's
like
funny.
that one. That's great.
That's always funny.
You know, whenever Dolores puts it up in the neighborhood, I love seeing her. She climbs the pole. She's 85 years old, and Dolores is just climbing this pole and doesn't give a shit about falling down, or she's missing a leg too, and she still just Jimmy's right up that pole and just puts the ghost up year after year. She's been doing it since 1930,
and she looks good doing it.
She does. But sometimes I can't tell if she's the witch or if the witch is her.
Don't know what that means, but it's fine.
So have you ever been to like a haunted house attraction? Either one that's like a pop-up event, like a Universal Studios. What do they call it? Ghost nights,
Halloween horror nights, I believe, is Universal. I think Fright Nights or Fright Fest is Six Flags, maybe.
Fright Fest is Great Adventure. Six Flags, yes. Yeah, and if I'll probably end up saying Great Adventure because I am a New Jersey native, and Six Flags Great Adventure is our local Six Flags.
It's funny
I know Six Flags.
I also, as you know, I'm from New Jersey. I always think of it as Six Flags. I've never called it Great Adventure. I don't know what that is.
So the history behind it, Great Adventure was what the park was originally in like the 70s, and then the Six Flags Corporation came in and bought it.
Because they also now have they're called different things. There's like Six Flags, is it Magic Mountain or something is somewhere, I think. There's
Six Flags over Texas, Six Flags America. They just kind of make up names. But we live in a fairly decent area for theme parks.
Yeah.
We have Hershey Park, Dorney Park, Six Flags Great Adventure, Legoland New York, which they also do a Halloween thing as well. Sesame Place.
The Count comes out at Halloween on Sesame.
That's the only thing. They just come out,
and there's a monster at the end of the book. I actually went to Hershey a couple years ago during Halloween, and they had, I don't know if they had any Fright Night stuff, but they did have decorations, and they had a trail where you got candy and some spooky Halloween music playing and stuff like that. It was a little goofier.
Okay.
But I have never done the official, the cool big hype Universal or Six Flags or Great Adventure or what have you.
Or I guess Disney does Halloween stuff too. I was just watching a video that they do like haunted, not haunted trails, but it's after certain hours you can go trick or treating. They have certain things.
They call it the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which is Yeah, it's like, and they also do, of course, they have the Haunted Mansion is always there for Halloween. But
Right.
yeah, they don't quite go as all out with what these other places do, which is really trying to frighten you. I have seen
Right.
several of those, like walkthroughs of those on YouTube or TikTok. And I have done a couple of, kind of the low rent local fare type of haunted houses.
Right. Yeah, I've what do you usually like those, or is it like me, like I go through those because like I've worked in the Halloween industry, like I've worked through Party
Halloween
City, I've worked
industry.
in different Halloween industry, which is what they used to call Party City in October, was the Halloween industry.
I believe
And so like I'm a big Halloween. I love Halloween. I love getting scared. I love watching all the horror movies, good, bad, or indifferent. And if I still could, I would go. No, I would go trick or treating if I still could.
You can,
but
you can try.
So, like, do you like these kind of events? Do you like going to haunted houses and being scared?
It's not like a thing I seek out, because I feel like obviously otherwise I would have done one of these things. I mean, we could. Yeah, there's no, Universal and Disney are kind of far away, but there's no reason in my 30 plus years of life I couldn't have some year or another gone out to Six Flags Great Adventure and tried one of these out. We could this year. They start in like September. I could have done it last month. They might even go through to like November or December. I'm not sure how long they actually go.
They probably do.
But I never had. I don't. I think I would enjoy on some level. I will say for much of my life, I was a big scaredy cat. And it took me a long time to even really warm up to roller coasters. Now I'm okay with the thrills and the chills. Is that a no wow for you?
Well, it's just weird because it's like I guess I've known you like going on like rides that are like, a little bit scarier. But I wouldn't think that like a roller coaster would be like a
for me, it was like I didn't really ever want to go on a loop. Or a really scary roller coaster until probably like post college is when I became brave enough to try those out. So I guess now that's, a decade plus.
I'm not a fan of God, you're old. I'm not a fan of the looping roller coasters because they make my tummy upset.
Sure.
I get the pukey.
You get afterwards. The pukey. So
I get the pukey.
But I do, one thing I really appreciate having seen these again from a very separated perspective, especially the ones at Universal and these places where they do the ones based on current movie properties and TV properties.
Right.
Seeing the effort that goes into the design of these places and knowing that it's temporary and they're tearing it down at the end of the season. And a lot of times you see the ones they'll be based on like there's Stranger Things or The Purge or whatever it is. And they'll have, I saw one that was from the latest Evil Dead movie, Evil Dead Rise. And it's like detailed recreations of the sets that look really good. That it really looks like.
And I think it was Universal, either Hollywood or Florida or Orlando. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where they do like, they had it was like the 25th anniversary of the movie Halloween. And they had the original, like from the first Halloween movie, the house set up. And it was the house. They built a 2-story home that looked like the house that Jamie Lee Curtis was in the movie Halloween. And it's wild to me, which I guess Universal, it makes sense because they're known for the Universal horror movies, all that kind of stuff that like kind of built their company. But then like some of the other theme parks, like the smaller theme parks, like the Six Flags and the Hershey Parks, they try to keep up with it. But it's really like, okay, we have like Six Flags Great Adventure here in Jackson, New Jersey. This year they have, I believe it's The Conjuring and Saw X.
Hey, those are pretty big. Those are big. Yeah, that's pretty big.
Those are big franchises. But I'm wondering if it's like, okay, we just have like a generic haunted house that kind of has some Conjuring stuff in it. Like people just walking around playing the clapping game or something, like stuff like that.
I love that clapping game. Well, now there's 8 Conjurings, so there's going to be a nun in there. There's going to be all kinds of stuff.
True.
No, I mean, I'm sure these are on YouTube. We could answer these questions. My guess is that they look pretty good because I think you got to compete now. I think Universal probably set the standard. I could be wrong. Maybe Six Flags started. I don't know. I feel like Universal were the ones who made it.
Like
big.
It would make sense. Like they had horror. Like
again, you have to.
But
you're on TikTok now, so like. You got to make it look good because you're going to be all over the internet.
And, in this part of New Jersey where I live in the southern part of the state, we have a lot of like privately owned farms and areas that do their own haunted houses or haunted hay rides and stuff like that. I've been to a bunch of those. Like we went to a haunted hay ride maybe about 5 years ago. Me and my partner try to find a new one every year. We know it's either going to be really scary or just really stupid. Like some guy just walking around with a chainsaw.
I've never done a haunted hayride that wasn't a little stupid. Are they ever really scary?
We went to one where it was like there was no lights and you're just driving through a cornfield, and like occasionally, like it would be more. It's jump scares. Yeah, all of these are. Yeah. And it was all zombie themed, and it was actually kind of like it got me a few times. Like that was one of the good ones.
Yeah, the thing about the haunted houses that again, mostly from watching them, is it's always. The atmosphere is so scary, but I feel like there's a threshold, and maybe not for everybody. For some people, they might just be scared all the time, no matter what. But if you're used to these things, at a certain point, you realize they're not allowed to ever touch you. And so when the video holds on this jump scare person, they always jump out and are real scary. Then they just kind of go, then they duck back behind the curtain because they can't. That's all they can do. So
now it is funny that you mentioned some of these. There are a few big ones. There's a few in like there's the old Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania, and there's one in New York where you sign a waiver, and it's like they're allowed to like attack you, basically. Like they can come up to you and like touch you and like like put their hands on you and like scare you that way. Have you seen
the Nathan For You episode where they do a haunted house?
No,
it's the scariest haunted house experience. I won't spoil it, but you can go on YouTube and find that.
But like I wouldn't do that because I would end up like punching somebody.
I bet that happens. These people got to be ready for that.
Yeah, but I you're right. A haunted house is different than like a haunted hayride or like a smaller thing because it's all about the immersive. Like at Six Flags and I'm sure at Universal, like while you're waiting in line, they have these characters prepping you before you get in, scaring you before you walk in the door. But there is a campy side to it because there's only, these are meant for like 13 and over. So there's only so much they can do to scare a child and an adult.
That's what I think, for better or worse, they've kind of become more about the IP, which I feel like is a positive thing because, like I said, I think at a certain point, the ins and outs of these scares, and now it's more about it's just about the immersion of it and being impressed by the art design and the presentation and that's like a different kind of scare than they've done before. So that's fun to see.
Now, as a movie person, like, you've done some movie history stuff and you've watched a lot of movies, and I don't
know. Go ahead.
Are you like, can you point out stuff more than you think the average person can? Like you're walking through and like, the music's getting different. Somebody's going to jump out here. Because that's a big issue.
I feel like based on ones I've seen and been in, they're not usually that elaborate. Like because the music is just kind of loud noises that plays everywhere. And you're just a jump scare is just good. I mean, you might be able to see like, I can see that corner. That's where they're going to come out and get you because it's a corner.
Right. Or you see like, there's a spotlight above them. That's going to be the next scare.
Some of the new ones they get pretty creative though with like, there's a fake mirror they come out of, or there's like walls that move and they jump out of. So
I like that. There's one on YouTube where it's like there's a painting on the wall and the painting drops into the wall and there's somebody behind it.
Pretty good.
That's a cool thing. But you're right though, with the invention of like social media and TikTok and all that, you have to one up it because now like people are watching this at home.
Yeah, it's true.
But so I was looking into some of like, we have one, like I was saying, Six Flags Great Adventure here in New Jersey. They shut down a lot of the major rides because I was looking it up. The reason they do this is a lot of their employment during the summer is teenagers who went back to school. So they might not have a full staff to run a full theme park and an added haunted experience, but I'm pretty sure the tickets are still the same price.
I thought it was like only at night, like you pay a ticket specifically for Fright Fest or whatever, and it's like starting at 6 p.m. is when all that stuff is.
Like the park, because I know it's only weekend hours because they don't do like it's not open 7 days a week like it is in
haven't
summer.
Looked at this up at all, so I truly have no idea. But that was just my assumption, is that it's like you're either buying a ticket for the theme park or you're buying a ticket for Fright Fest. You're not really there for the rides, but I don't know.
Because like for me, it would be like an added, like, oh, I want to go to this, I want to ride, I don't know, whatever big, they have a Jersey Devil roller coaster. I would want to ride this roller coaster at night while there's like, I live like 20 minutes away from the theme park. But they have like the, to go on this ride while there's like, a fire breather like 20 feet away.
Fire breather?
Like, weird stuff. Have you not seen these?
You're talking about,
there's videos.
You're talking about like
the fire,
like a man who man who has a stick.
Yeah.
Shoots. I thought this was like a name for an ancient medieval term for a demon of some kind. A fire breather descends upon us from the east.
Well, I'm sure that's what they called, like, a dragon.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant, but that's not what you meant. Yeah, I don't know. But it seems good. Someday I would like to do it, but it's not something that I really feel like, I don't feel a strong urge. It's not I love horror movies, but I don't know. I'd probably be a scared little bitch at one of these, to be honest with you.
But then that's what you're paying for.
That's what you're paying for, yeah. That's the fun of it. Well, subscribe to our Patreon, and we'll go next year, and we'll let you know how it is.
There you go.
Anyway, these things are all happening. It's all exciting. We're all getting in the spooky season. We are going to move off the spookiness, but we are going to stay on the subject of theme parks for today's case, which does take place in the realm of Orlando, Florida, as we mentioned, at Universal Studios. Today's case comes to us from the internet. You can find a link in our episode description. Our defendant today is Molly. Molly and her husband Arthur are enjoying a vacation at Universal Studios and waiting in line for the Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure roller coaster. Say that 5 times fast. Everyone at home did it. Okay, good job. First thing in the morning, Molly and Arthur rush to get to the ride to be early in line, along with a bunch of other park goers, only slowing down upon approaching the edge of the queue. This is when the incident occurs, creating today's case. Unlike the rest of the crowd, one girl is running in front of people, still frantically trying to get a better spot in line. Molly and Arthur see her coming and, anticipating her movements, reposition themselves to block her from moving past them, thinking her behavior rude. The girl, however, persists, trying to maneuver around the two of them, at which point Molly says to her, "Hey, this is the official line. I don't know if you noticed. You shouldn't be going ahead of us." And even going so far as to put her arm out to physically block her from getting ahead. At this point, a couple up front ahead of them tells them that this girl is their niece, and Molly lets her through and says, "Hey, next time you should have just said something instead of just trying to move past us like that." The girl starts tearing up, says that she has severe anxiety, and that is part of the problem and why she didn't make that declaration known. Kind of a complicated case. Bear with us today, folks. As dual judges here on Geeks on Trial, it's now our job to determine whether it was fine to cross that line or if that shouldn't be done anytime. There's a lot I had to get through there.
You have to get back in line for that one.
I'm tired. There's a lot.
If you said that to me while you're in line, I'd be like, get in the back of the line, kid.
If someone is saying what I just said to you in line, call the police.
Because they have clearly lost their goddamn mind.
And I might be like on a bender, or I'm off my meds and I've escaped from the home and I'm just wandering.
Well, whenever I see you just randomly approaching me in a line, I do call the cops. Yeah. And most people
I'm usually half naked and there's blood smeared all over my face and I smell like entrails.
And like weirdly half naked, like half down your body.
I'm wearing a suit, but I have directly cut it lengthwise in half.
Yeah, I don't know how you. It's magical how you do it, but gosh, it's frightening.
Yeah, well, that's why they pay me to come back every year. Anyway, we're talking about theme parks. We're talking about lines. Ivan, I know you were looking at this case, and there were some things that you were a little bit unclear on, not being as much of a theme park person, perhaps. Or not, at least not having we've talked about this in the past, not having been to these kind of bigger theme parks the way that I have. Were there some questions, and maybe the listeners or viewers feel the same way, that you some things you wanted cleared up ahead of time?
What is a roller coaster?
Okay, so
no, I need the bare minimum. Now, I'm trying to figure what was the word. Oh, a rope drop.
A rope drop, right? So that is what
a rope
Molly
drop.
and Arthur are attempting a rope drop. I wonder if this came up in our other theme park episode or if it didn't. I don't know. But rope drop simply, it refers to the opening hours of the park when everybody will queue up in advance just to get in the front gate, not at the line yet. So you are of course blocked off by a rope, like the velvet rope kind of crowd control rope. And they call it the rope drop because the idea is you get to the park early, and the second the rope drops, you start walking quickly to one of the rides so that you can get in line early and not have to wait a very long time. And usually you do this, you'll say, I'm going to go rope drop, for instance, Hagrid's magical motorbike fuckscapade. Because it's one of the more popular lines, and you know that by, like, if you don't, usually for the theme park people, unless you buy passes or whatever, if you don't do the rope drop and get there early, by the time, 30 minutes after the park's opened, that ride has a line that's 2 or 3 hours. Whereas if you rope drop and you get there and you plan it well, you could be on that ride and out in 15 minutes. That's the idea.
Now, this seems like it's a newer thing in the past, maybe 20 years, where these rides have been more sought after, like the Star Wars rides and the movie IP rides. It seems like this is like a bigger thing because like I said, I've never gone to Disney Universal. I've done our local Hershey Park, Dorney Park, whatever's. And it's like, all the rides there are kind of like roughly this, like they're roller coasters or whatever. It's not an IP driven or a big IP driven adventure, where I think that's what theme parks are now, is more of you're going there to ride one ride, the rest is good. It's fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know about one ride, but yeah, there are certainly signature attractions. I think Great Adventure has that too. I think there's still like, I haven't been there in so long. There's like King Dakar or whatever. Isn't that the
right? And they want it like that's like the big
right. Yeah. There's probably still the ones, but you are right. I think it's more of a thing at the Disney and Universal, and I don't know if it's so much of that recent, maybe 20 years, but it's certainly, I think part of it is with the spread of social media and the internet, the strategies for these things have become more widely known and discussed. Right. So like,
because before I feel like it would just be like the freaks who would just be like on these message boards back in the day being like, oh, I'm going to show up at this time. I'm going to camp out until this, like stuff like that. They might
have still done this kind of thing, but there maybe wasn't like this kind of an official term for it, or it wasn't as much of the theme park culture, as you were saying.
And I also feel like too, like theme parks allow this now, where I feel like back in the day it was like, we don't even open the parking lot until X amount of time, and then you get there.
They realize,
like now it's like it's part. They probably sell like food and drinks while you're waiting.
They know they're gonna get. These are the people who are gonna spend more money and come back more often. Probably, they make their money off the people who come every year. They know fanatics, the ins and outs. Right, yeah, exactly. The Philly fanatics.
Now, are you a line
cutter? Waiter?
No. Well, are you a line cutter? Like, if you have the ability and like, oh, I can just kind of weasel my way. I know you're not. Like, that's not your personality. No. But like,
of course not.
I would never do that. Even if, like, I even feel guilty if like I'm waiting in line and my friends 20 people up and they're like, oh, just come join us. I'd be like, no, because I'm the kind of person who, like, if I see this kind of stuff, I get very upset. And I'm the kind of person who will say something.
If you see something, say something.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that is maybe the crux of this case, is whether or not that was occurring. Because my reading of it, strictly from the case file, and I have been to Universal, and I have been to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, as they call this section. But when I last went, this specific roller coaster was not open yet.
Which, by the way, this roller coaster, I looked at videos online.
Amazing.
It looks wild, but it breaks down all the time from videos that I've seen.
I bet. But I've heard that it's like one of the best rides, if not the best ride in the park currently. I'm mad that it wasn't open when I was there. Anyway, but that was like 10 years ago, so I can't blame them. So I don't know the specifics of like exactly how and where this cue begins, because there is a point. It's hard for me to tell from this case file. It sounds like Molly is saying, in her mind, they were at the point where, like, this is the line. This is the official line.
Right. Like if you, for example, like you cross, like, let's use a carnival, for example. You give your ticket already and you're in the velvet rope area. You're behind the fence. It's not like we're just looking out the outside of it. This is like you cross the threshold, you're here.
Versus there may or may not be, for certain rides in certain parks, especially for the rope drop time, there might be like an agreed upon point in my head, maybe like 80% of the way to the real start of the line, where the crowd kind of goes, we don't have to be walking as fast. We're all sort of in a position right now. And if we as mob mentality, if we all come together and agree, this is our spot, we can sort of slow down. We don't have to be going crazy. And there's kind of an unspoken agreement that we'll all just keep these positions and be okay with it. And so it sounds like Molly's saying they were past that point, but it's hard for me. I don't know. That point may or may not be. Different people may have different feelings about it.
I'm assuming, from what I read, I'm assuming that they were already in the official line queue of where they have like the TVs going and like they're prepping you to be in line.
I wish she specifically mentioned queue elements like that.
And I also like, I didn't realize like that was a thing. Like there's a lot of like theme park etiquette that's like unwritten kind of thing, which is kind of weird to me, where it's like people that aren't the theme park came up with these rules that you have to follow about the line.
Don't
like
be half naked and don't recite podcast descriptions to people.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of it. I don't know. Yep. What are are any specifics?
Well, no, just like the thing you were talking about just now, like the line before the line.
Right. That's certainly,
like, to me, it just seems like you just, whoever gets there, and once you're in line.
Point, I think it's like,
right. It's like an unofficial rule.
Yes. And it's hard to say where that begins and ends and who's the arbiter of what's right and wrong. Sometimes they'll have, for really, like, you go to Disney, certain rides are so big that they will have employees, staff, like along the way being like, don't run, come this way for this ride. The line is going to start way back. Like sometimes I've done this for the Avatar ride at Animal Kingdom. And when you rope drop it, the line starts before the line, like very clearly, like they have it marked off in a further away because they know people are coming through early.
Right. Because they don't want people just randomly standing around and fights breaking out. You know, there has to be, theme parks are so well thought out of, especially the Disney ones, that like they have to figure out. And that's the other thing I was going to bring up about this case is there are rules. There are like physically written rules about line cutting in theme parks because they'll throw you out of the park.
It is interesting because I don't know. I mean, this is a thing where it's very much about societal, like you said, unspoken agreements, because it's not like you're not signing anything when you go into the park. As far as I know, as far as I can remember, and maybe I'm just not observant, they could be there. I'm trying to think about like Disney queues I've been in. There are definitely, I don't know if the signs, when you first they certainly have signs that will say stuff about, you know, stow your cell phone or whatever, this ride, you can't have anything in your pockets, or I don't know that they always say explicitly no cutting. I feel like it's almost,
there has to be some kind of,
I feel like it's like so just understood by society. I don't know.
But then, you know, you're going to get that jerk who's like, oh, there's no rules. I could just walk right up to the front of the line.
Might.
No,
you're right.
There has to be a rule, because there was somebody who scammed the system by saying they were handicapped and they were able to cut in front of the line for these reasons. So there has to be a rule in play that, you know, because if
maybe, but I mean, isn't that a separate thing though? This is one of those things,
right?
Where
no, but
there's just clearly an answer and neither of us know it. But I think even if there's an argument, look, I'm not on this side. Are you trying to look it up? I don't want to be on the side of the line cutters, but I do wonder if there's not an argument of, it's not an explicit thing that is like stated. I don't know if one, they probably will kick you out just because other guests will complain. So it's
God, there's so many like non-official websites out there. Because Disney, like I love Disney and everything, but it's such a subculture.
We love them.
I guess it says Disney is now taking steps against line cutters. I didn't go into the full details, but I guess there is some kind of.
No, I don't. That could be about anything. Who knows?
Right. I didn't.
This doesn't really tell us anything. I'm just trying to think: is there a sign in the queue that specifically tells you not to? And maybe there is. I don't know. We don't know. There's no way to find out.
Or it's like maybe not in the queue. It's like when you first walk into the park. Because I know there's like these signs that they have to make visible, but they're not visible. Like, you're in the park. We can legally film you and use you for commercials. Like stuff like that.
But I've certainly seen, and probably even been a part of, lines with, like, oh, my family. Now, what do you think about that? Like, there's a group, your family or whoever, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your significant other. They're holding a spot for you, and you're saying, "Please, I need to get in there." I have an answer
I'm okay
to this,
with that.
What do you think?
Because like there have been times too where it's like, okay, hold my place in line, and if you tell the people, like if people come up behind you and you're like, "Oh, we're 4 people," and there's only 3 of you, that kind of gives you a pass because like sometimes somebody, "Oh, I need to run to the restroom. Oh, I need to go grab something real quick." Like that's human nature. Like stuff happens where it's like, oh, I'll meet you there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's fine. And as long as you are open about it against the people who are behind you, or at least just the one person behind you, then that's fine. But yeah, I feel like that's fine.
Yeah, especially on these rides, these lines where you can be in them for a long time. I mean, there are often bathrooms in the queue. So clearly they...
Are there really?
Yeah, free.
That's...
Oh yeah, I mean,
ridiculous.
I've been on line and rides for at least a couple hours in my life, and they're very long. And sometimes you got to go, and especially if someone has a condition or whatever, you got to make it accessible to them. But I don't know. I feel like there's maybe a point, like you said. It definitely feels better if the person makes an appearance. And then they're like, oh, I'll be like, if the person behind you sees them leaving and coming back, or if you're the person, like you said, you say to the people behind you, just so you know, we're one other person's coming. Sorry, but we're in a group together. And that's the thing also with this case. Personally, if I am in one of these lines, if I see one person moving ahead of people past a point where I feel like that's acceptable, my assumption is going to be that that's what they're doing. I think that I'm going to assume they are meeting somebody, not assume the worst of them. And then the question is, at what point, how much of it is the responsibility? If that's you, if you're in this situation, are you supposed to be saying to each person you meet in line, "Excuse me, I'm meeting someone. Excuse me, I'm meeting someone." Like, where's the cutoff point? What should you do?
So me personally, if I just see somebody, depends on where you are. If it's one person, if it's a group of people. So if it's like one person and they're like younger or also older, like if they're like 65 or if they're a gray hair and they're trying to get through, or if there's someone who is like 12, you kind of like, okay, fine. They're good at screwing the system or they just have to get somewhere. And if there is one of them, you kind of just... But if it's like a group of people coming through, that's when you kind of go, hey, we're all waiting in line. What's up? But it's all about communication. If I'm going through line, like if you're in line and I'm like, oh, I have to run to the bathroom or whatever, I'll come up behind people. Oh, excuse me, I'm meeting somebody up there. Mm-hmm. But I'll say it loud enough to where it's like, I won't have to like, and also like part of that too is in a line, you're all facing one direction. So like you want to tell people, oh, excuse me, I need to get up here, because like you don't want to just be like, oh, pardon me, excuse me, shoving through people, because they're talking about anxiety in this thing, and that's another thing of anxiety is like somebody just like showing up behind you don't know.
Like a haunted house.
But like because I'm assuming this person was saying excuse me to get through. just throw in my family's up here. Excuse me, I'm trying to, even if you're trying to cut in line, here's a tip from me. If you're trying to cut in line, just say to people, excuse me, I'm trying to get to my family. They're up front.
So good tip. A few points here. Number one, I believe, according to the case file, we're assuming this girl in question is maybe 17 or 18, somewhere in that, maybe between 16 and 19, somewhere in that range. An adult. Yeah, numbered. It depends on your view. And depends on the consent laws in your area. Based on number two, not necessarily. You're saying, I don't know if this makes any difference, but I just thought I'd say it to fill time. You're saying everyone is looking in one direction. Maybe not always the case at a Disney or Universal when a line can be a couple hours. If you're a group of, say, 3 or 4 people, a lot of times you might be like in a circle kind of. So some people might be looking to one side or kind of looking behind you.
But generally,
yes, you're keeping an eye on the forward motion of the line for sure.
And also, like, I've never been to these theme parks.
Hershey, though, is
they're usually like,
you've done Hershey.
Yeah. And they're usually smaller. It's a tighter area. It's not like a giant area where you have wiggle room. So like for a person to pass you, you have to like move over to like where you should be like saying something as you're passing. And
that's the other thing. It does, from according to the case file, at least Molly did not hear this girl saying anything. It sounds like she, and according to her, maybe that she has anxiety and that she just really doesn't like having to talk to strangers, something along those lines. I don't know. But yeah, you're saying you do the thing of, I feel like that's I don't know, when you're on the line for an airplane, or I'm trying to think of a better example. There's situations where, like at the airport is my best example, not on the airplane, but like when you're going through security and the person, the TSA agent has to say, like, take all your electronics out, take your shoes off. And they kind of say it like roughly every 10 or 15 people, because it's like, I don't need to say it for every person.
You say it a little bit louder so you can kind of, Now, let me tell you, at an airport, that is where my fuse is very short. When they start calling like, oh, group 1, group 2 come up, and you see people just like in front of you, like the line starting here, that's when I'll be like, hey, there's one line.
Whoa.
Like, get behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'll curse at people at the airport.
Are you talking about the security line or boarding the plane?
No. Like the boarding lines. You know, when it's like, when they start like, that's another unofficial line too. And like you're unofficially lining up, and then there's like, oh, there's a third line over here.
But
like,
the plane lines, I never understood. I mean, it's the group 1, you get the advantage because I guess you're probably in first class and you don't have to like walk past people. But you're all like getting on the same plane and leaving at the same time. It's not like,
honestly, if I'm sitting in an aisle, I'll wait till everyone's on board.
Yeah, I usually am like wait until the end. Like, I'm not. I mean, I'm always whatever the last group is, but
right. Or unless I know there's like a limited amount of space for your bag.
Yeah, space for the bag. Yeah.
But like, I don't care if people see me walk through.
Matter.
Like,
it doesn't matter.
And I hate waiting on an airplane if I don't need to be on an airplane. Sure. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, at a theme park.
But like so I'll bring up we went to AMC recently to go see a movie.
Makes
sense.
And
AMC has two different lines now. They have the you paid money so you can skip line, and they have the regular
Which,
line.
Of course, theme parks have too.
But AMC, or at least our local ones, they ignore those, and they just call whoever's next in line.
Well, come on.
So it's up to you to do that. But like, there was an issue where it was like a group of teenagers were in front of me, and then another group of like 5 or plus people were coming to meet them. And they're all individually buying stuff. So I wouldn't let them through. Yeah,
I would. Going back to your earlier point, I do think it makes a big difference if it's one person versus even 2 is like, that's raising a red flag. Yeah. 3 or more is like, what the hell's going on here?
No.
That's a hard line.
Because especially at for like an airplane or whatever, but a theme park where you literally counting by the seats.
Yeah.
And like a concession stand where it's like, you're going to make me late for my movie.
Right.
Like if it's like, you're right, there's a limit. One person coming through, depending on their age.
Now, if it's a person with a baby or like a stroller, that's also, I'm probably going to give them a lot more leeway and say, go ahead.
Right. wheelchair, stroller, like anything like that, fine. That's whatever.
Yeah.
And usually they have another person with them. But like if it's just like a group of, 17 or 18-year-olds or around that age, I'm going to give them a little gruff.
So I kind of think I know where I stand on this case. I almost don't want to like go into anymore because I feel like I'm just going to sum up my verdict, to be honest. But I don't know. Are there any other issues?
The only thing that was a big part of this was the anxiety that we didn't bring up. Now, I have anxiety. Everybody has anxiety. It depends on the level of anxiety that you have. I feel like if your anxiety is that bad that you can't just say in a simple, excuse me, going to my parents or whoever, then a theme park might not be the place for you.
Well, I don't know if, it's hard to say because everybody's different. Everyone has different levels of comfort. I will say someone maybe just should have been accompanying this person. If they're meeting two people,
the anxiety,
someone should have stayed with them.
That right? Or like your anxiety's bad, don't leave the line. Or if your anxiety is that bad, depending on where it is, they have medical accommodations for people at these parks. That's like one of the major, like ADA, the Disabilities Act or whatever they call it. They have a separate area for you to go through if there are issues. So like, that's where I kind of call shenanigans for certain things. But like, you're right. Everybody's anxiety is different and they're triggered at different times.
Yeah.
But just like, you would think the anxiety would be worse just kind of like plowing through people.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, from this girl's perspective, she's very possibly this is a nightmare for her, as it probably would be for me. And we have no idea was some kind of emergency happened. I don't know. I do think that that yes, she no question was one of the people, the niece, the aunt or uncle, presumably is the couple that's with her should have stayed with her. One of them should have stayed with her in this situation. Maybe they got separated.
There are times too where it's
rope drop, right? It's like the very opening of the park. So maybe they just ran ahead. Why'd they run ahead then? Maybe she had to go to the bathroom again. I don't know. But
again, that's future planning. Yeah. But like, it's a theme park. You kind of have to take that into account that it's part of it's, you're not there for waiting for riding rides. You're there for waiting in line.
That's what it's all
you're paying
about.
Money for.
That's the good shit.
So yeah, I'm ready for my verdicts.
You want to start this time?
I would say so we are going against.
We're judging whether or not Molly is guilty of blocking and making this girl feel bad for trying to get ahead.
I 100%. I am the Molly in this situation. Maybe I wouldn't have like put my arm out or like, physically tried to stop her and, but I would have been like, hey, where are you going? Like, I'm going to question you. That could be I've lived in New Jersey for 34 years part of my life.
I haven't heard you mention New Jersey
yet.
What the Go ahead. So your new Boston? I've been gonged. I got to go.
The whole like, hey, where the fuck are you going? The New Jersey comes out of me. But, I... See, thank you. So like, I would mention something and, we're all waiting in a line. And so I don't think Molly did anything wrong. Assuming that she didn't like touch this person and like, arm out like, whoa, back, that kind of thing. But like, she's not guilty. Molly is a hard not guilty in my case because she's been waiting in this line just like everyone else has. So why is, the other girl privileged to skip ahead and not wait in this line like everyone else, especially at a morning thing. Everyone's cranky. It's the morning. You had to drop your rope.
You're always dropping ropes in the morning, and it takes a lot out of you.
Always dropping.
It takes a lot out of you.
Yeah. So yeah, not guilty.
You mean guilty? No, you mean not guilty. Sorry.
Guilty.
You mean not guilty.
Molly is not guilty. Yeah. Okay. Don't
tricked you. I got you.
Don't you ever question me. Don't question me.
I've gotten out of a lot of court cases that way. The judge is like guilty, and I'm like, you mean not guilty? Right. Sorry, not guilty. Yeah.
Well, I usually just bring my gong, and they're like, "Oh, he is insane."
People don't know it's very easy to confuse judges. It's a little ploy you can use.
So, what about you? What is your verdict?
So, on the one hand, I do think that this girl who is moving ahead in line could have handled this better. The family as a whole should have had this figured out to begin with. From what it sounds like, I think the position they were at in line was probably more towards the actually being line, although maybe there was or wasn't a gray area involved. Maybe I'm giving a little more lenience on that because I can't quite picture it in my head on if this crowd, like how tightly formed this line is just yet.
But okay, let me question
in the middle of my
this.
verdict is, come on, go ahead.
Well, no, because this line, this secondary line,
is that what we're calling it?
Isn't that still a line?
Like I said, I think until you're at the like line starts here sign, you're not on a line.
Okay.
That's what I'm and maybe
it's not official.
That's what I'm not sure. It sounds like I think I have to assume they are past that point, but I'm not 100% sure. Right. That's all. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so there's some blame on that side for sure. In Molly's position for me, I'll come to this from if I were the Molly, and if I were to do Molly in this line. I'm tired. All right, let me keep going. No, it's gonna be fine.
Well, that's what you want to do, Molly.
It's gonna be fine. Take it however you want to take that. Like I said, one thing we agree on is that it's fine morally. I think we agree on this for this girl to have moved ahead to meet the rest of her party. The complaint we have is that she didn't make it known, that she wasn't being up front with what was going on here.
Right. Upfront about being,
and therefore it was okay on Molly's part to assume that she wasn't being genuine with her. It didn't have good intentions here, that she was just cutting.
Right.
I think personally, I wouldn't make that assumption. I don't know if it's totally a fair assumption to make. For me, if I saw a young girl, I wouldn't be trying to stop her. We don't need to get into the young girls and what I see them. I would personally just assume she must have somewhere to go. If at some point, if she stops in front of somebody and she's not meeting someone, it's that person's job to yell at them, in my opinion. I'm a person who wants to avoid confrontation. I'm certainly not going to put my arm out or try to block anybody. I will just go, like, if they literally stand in front of me and clearly they're by themselves, right, then I'll be like, okay, excuse me, why are you in line right now? That's a little rude. But in this instance, to me, I don't think it was justified. So while I do think there's some gray area here, to me, Molly I am going to declare her as guilty. I think she should have let this one go. And it's regardless of, the aftermath. It's not, to me, I don't think she should feel bad. She didn't know this girl had anxiety. That part's not her fault.
Right, that's a secondary.
But I do think, just generally speaking, the best plan, and this differs depending on your attitude in life, the best way to avoid strife is just to kind of live and let live. And there's a line where you don't let people cross it, in this case a literal line, but to me it didn't cross that line, so I say guilty.
Interesting.
So which means we have a mistrial on our hands.
We do have a mistrial,
which means that both parties are going to be punished.
Right.
Because that's how we do things. So you're going to punish the girl who has gone nameless. You have to decide,
because I think you can't punish people under the age of 18. You're on a list, so
correct.
You can't.
I cannot get within 300 feet of her.
Right, which is weird with going to lines and theme parks. That's a separate. Do they have a sex?
That might be
line?
why she was moving. I might have been behind her, and she had to keep.
It's very spaced out.
Yeah.
So I'm punishing the girl. She has to go back to the thing that I would make her do if I was an employee or whatever is make her go back to the end of the line.
Okay. What? I thought you don't want to go more. She's got to stand at the end of the line of every line forever or something.
Oh, no. I mean the end of the line for the theme park.
Okay.
She has to go to the traffic line. I've never been at Disney or Universal. I'm assuming there's like a line to get in.
Oh, probably. The parking lot.
Traffic. She has to go. She has to be a line attendant. She has to be the person that stops people, and that'll really
that will probably she will be suffering.
So yeah, she has to be the because I'm sure they have like line police and stuff like that. Like they have staff members in these lines, right?
It depends. They definitely have people along the way. It depends on the theme park and how crowded they are and how well staffed they are. But
because I know, like we were talking about local theme parks, I know Six Flags, our local one, is very like because we get a lot of rowdy teens that like parents will get it's their babysitter more or less, and like you cut a line, you'll get a warning and you kind of have to leave for the day. You cut the line twice or like do anything like that, you're banned for life.
Yeah, at Universal,
which is crazy.
There are definitely blind spots where there aren't people because the lines are really long. So,
Have you ever dealt with this?
No, not any. I mean, I'm sure I must have been witness to people. I think probably last time I went to Disney, I was there with my sister and her 2 kids. So I bet there were times when this was us, when again, one of us had to take a kid to the bathroom and bring them in. But again, that was probably, I'm sure we were more communicative and it was probably while we were in line already.
Right. And you're holding
There's
a child.
Also a point where it's like, it depends on how deep into the line you are. Like if you got to cut all the way to the front, like then just wait. It depends on what percentage in you are.
Like if you're halfway through, you're kind of like,
yeah. There's certainly a cutoff point. Anyway, my punishment for Molly is that she has to do Molly. I don't know what to do with her. I'm sorry, folks.
See, just because you don't have a punishment, you have to go back. You have to go on my side.
It's just so hard not to just say for both the easy things, like, oh, you got to wait in a really long line or whatever without any, just no fast passes.
I would say for her, no fast pass, which I think are unfair, but that's a whole different thing to begin with. But like you have to, I don't know, for her punishment, she can't go to theme parks for 1 season.
No season of theme parks. Yeah, I don't know. There's a more creative punishment. My brain is tired. I can't come up with it.
She has to ride all the sea rides, all the rides that are bad, like the non-themed. She's only ride. It's a small
thought you
world.
meant like the ones themed around the ocean, the sea rides.
Oh, no.
Folks, maybe you can come up with a better punishment than we did for either of these parties. You can also let us know, who do you side with?
Mine was fine.
Guilty or not guilty? I think we all agree both were maybe not quite up to snuff. You can email us, geeksontrial@gmail.com. That's also where you can go to give us your own geeky case, whether it's about theme parks, video games, movies, board games, whatever it is. Send it to us. We will cover it on the show if it's good enough, and we will settle it and give you a verdict for your very own to take home and prove you're right or wrong in one way or the other. Again,
and even if it's not good enough.
Yeah, if it's subpar, we'll probably take that too. geeksontrial@gmail.com, or you can use our handy-dandy form, which is in our episode description.
It's true, and while you're in the description, you can click the link or just go to patreon.com/geeksontrial. And for a few bucks a month, you get early access and some bonus features, which will be rolling out in the future. So stay tuned
Ivan?
For that. The future, Conan. Speaking of Conan O'Brien, Conan, where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, you can follow me in my podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. We have Mo Rocca on this week, so check that out. You can also, go to my website, jonathanss.com. You'll find I do YouTube videos, podcasts, newsletters, and all kinds of fun, creative stuff over there.
And you can find my stuff over at ivanhan.com or youtube.com/thesnackguy. And I guess that wraps up this episode of Geeks on Trial. I'm Ivan Hahn.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and we'll be seeing you guys in the future.
Well, yeah, where else would we see in the past?